30,000 people are now known to have died in Turkey and Syria following Monday's devastating earthquakes.
Rescue efforts are still ongoing, but almost a week on, hope is fading that many more people will be found alive.
Meanwhile, Turkey's vice president has said more than 100 arrest warrants have been issued over the construction of buildings that collapsed. Louisa Pilby has this report.
Bebek. Al bunu da.
This is the sound of survival. A baby pulled alive from the rubble by rescuers after nearly 6 days in Hatay, southern Turkey. And 7-year-old Ishra freed after being trapped for 136 hours. And in Syria, where fewer rescue teams are able to reach in the war-torn country, people still somehow being found. But the faith in miracles is fading.
3 of my grandchildren, with a husband and my daughter. 5 people, I'm waiting.
And amongst the grief, there is anger. At least 6,000 apartment buildings collapsed in Turkey, many newly constructed, with few people getting out alive.
The building company threw concrete pieces and coal ash inside. Construction, sand pile, that's it.
This is a building collapsing in Turkey, hours after a series of earthquakes and aftershocks on February 6th. First, the bottom floor crumbled. Then, the rest of the building came down on top of it in what's known as a pancake collapse. Thousands of buildings near the epicenter in southern Turkey and northern Syria tumbled straight down in a similar way. The intensity of the earthquakes alone carried the potential for destruction. But it's the pancake collapses that have made this one of the deadliest disasters in the region. The death toll continues to climb as many victims are still stuck under the weight of the buildings. So what is it about these buildings that has made this earthquake even more devastating? First, let's look at the larger region that's prone to severe earthquakes because of these 2 fault lines. They sit along tectonic plates that meet one another and cause friction. When the friction builds up, a powerful earthquake is eventually released. Over the last century, Turkey has seen major earthquakes along both fault lines. The most recent one happened here. This is the seismic impact that shows the epicenter. When you take a closer look at the most impacted areas, they were densely populated with Syrian refugees who ended up living in buildings that were haphazardly built and largely neglected. And across the border in Syria, buildings in these areas were already weakened by the prolonged civil war. But what really complicates this disaster is that Turkey was aware of the buildings that were the most high risk. They're called soft-story structures. A soft-story building is typically a large structure with multiple floors and an open plan on the bottom. That bottom floor can sometimes be a parking garage, space for small businesses, or extra homes. These buildings are very common throughout the world, especially in countries like India, Pakistan, and Turkey, because they offer a solution to overcrowding in densely populated areas. But they historically do a poor job of withstanding medium to powerful earthquakes. Here's why. These columns here are usually made of wood, and the stories on top might be made of heavier materials like concrete. Sometimes the bottom floor has fewer walls than the ones above, with sides that may be left open, or columns that aren't connected by walls. This means that a soft story is the weakest floor, and cannot fully support the heavier ones above it. So when an earthquake hits, the structure may shake, until that bottom floor collapses. During powerful earthquakes like Turkey and Syria's, the remainder of the building may follow. This kind of collapse traps people under heavy construction materials, making rescue missions even more difficult. But this is a challenge Turkey has faced before. A comparable 7.6 earthquake hit Izmit in 1999 and caused over 17,000 deaths. It became clear that poor building design and soft stories, which made up nearly 90% of building collapses, exacerbated the death toll in this disaster. The aftermath pushed the Turkish government to reintroduce building codes with an emphasis on earthquake safety. but they weren't enforced due to corruption, and many buildings in Turkey were built well before 1999, which meant those buildings could only be strengthened retroactively. There is a way to keep soft-story buildings intact in the event of an earthquake, retrofitting them with materials that can support the weight of the structure. In an ideal scenario, these wooden columns can be replaced or reinforced with steel frames. These open walls can be reinforced too, and extra bolts and braces can be drilled into the foundation. So if the structure shakes, there's support from that bottom floor. A solution like this seems simple, but it's extremely expensive to execute. According to the World Bank, around 6.7 million residential buildings in Turkey need retrofitting or reconstruction at a cost of $465 billion. As of 2021, only about 4% of those buildings were transformed. In fact, retrofitting is an expensive undertaking and nearly impossible even in countries like the US.
السلام عليكم. إذا كنت لست حاسد اشترك في قناتي واضغط على زر الإعجاب لكي يصلك كل جديد. السلام عليكم. إذا كنت لست حاسد اشترك في قناتي واضغط على زر الإعجاب لكي يصلك كل جديد.